Thank you for coming and participating. I hope you will get something out of this presentation of our project, where one part of it is the evaluation as a powerful learning practice. And this is a big ongoing project that runs in Denmark right now. It's called Students Digital Production and Students as Learning Designers. And we're going to finish it next year. And it's funded by the Ministry of Education in Denmark. And it's a collaboration between two universities, this university and the IT University in Copenhagen. And four of the partners are the three of the other partners are my colleagues from our lab, ResearchLAB here in this building. This is Helle Karoff and Stine Eising-Dun and Birgitte Holm, who unfortunately couldn't come because of some incidents happening today. And then we have 3 university colleges involved with researchers also attached to the project. The university colleges is in Denmark, teacher education. And we have 5 Danish public schools. The schools have applied to be part of this project, so they're not pointed out. We set up like a project description that the ministry accepted and said we would like to have your project and we will give you 6 million Danish kroner to run that project in that period of time. And then the schools can apply, because we didn't want, and the ministry didn't want schools who say, well, it's a nice way to have cheap consultants helping us out with digital learning. We want schools that are actually capable of doing the experiments that we wanted to provide. And we run this project among 500 students and have approximately 40 teachers involved in the study. And we run 6 interventions. The first ones goes from 1st to 2nd grade, so 3 in 1st grade and then 3 in 2nd grade. And then we have like from 5th to 6th the same way, and we have 10th grade, and of course because 10th grade only run for 1 year, we have all 6 interventions 2 times in 2 different 10th grade cohorts in one 10th grade center. This is where we are on the timeline in the project. So we are just in the middle of the 2nd year of interventions, and have to go for analyzing, report and dissemination, because this is also a project that has built in a dissemination and implementation strategy. And this leads me to say that is why the project is not like a following research project, somebody do something and we come out and see what happens, or like a design-based research project. This is a project which is based primarily on action research, where we collaborate with the teachers and the schools in order to find good ways of conducting teaching and learning, and have it spread out to the school, and from the schools to other schools in the municipalities. So there's a whole strategy for rolling out our findings and practices during the project, so that when the project ends, hopefully there will be a sustainable practice run out in different schools with knowledge sharing and things growing from that. We built a project on research that findings from another project we had in Copenhagen. That was Birgitte and I who run that project about digital production. And there we found that using constructing resources rather than digitally designed learning objectives and learning programs was a strong learning practice for the students, because it empowered the students, and the students were allowed to get space to be part of the planning and organizing of their own learning processes. And it sets the stage for the students to get space for to playing out their creative and innovative side and get them consolidated. And that leads us in to say that some of the findings that we brought from that project into our application for this new project, which the Ministry actually bought, is that we have this, that students' digital production facilitates the learning processes and also qualifies the learning outcomes. We have kids that bypass, like in math, like 2 or 3 years on the learning goals, working in these ways. And we could see that it had a positive impact on the academic achievement, engagement, and self-motivation, wanting to learn. But that is one of the things that I will come back to, is that happens if the design for learning that the teacher has set up as a framework allows the students to act as learning designers within the teacher's frame. And I'll come back to that. If that is not part of the practice, we don't see those big learning jumps, and we don't see the things that we found in that netbook one-to-one project that you can read about in other contexts. So that led us up to the research questions, that what we actually look for is what teacher design frameworks facilitate learning for students as learning designers when they are producing digital learning objects. And that's a point, that's a turning point of the whole setup, is that they're not just producing for presentation, they're actually producing learning objects that are usable for other students, meaning that we force evaluation as a practice for learning and doing the things. It becomes the student's practice as well. And then we say which components or elements in the student's own design for learning qualify their learning outcomes. That's what we look for in the project. And in order to do that, we have designed, not as in design-based research, some interventions that we run on the schools, but only a framework. And the framework says that the student must produce digital. It must be an everyday setting. It's not like now we're doing something special because we have a project. Now we behave different because we have researchers in the classroom. It has been worked into the everyday, all-year school planning. And then we have this said that the framework for our interventions increase in complexity from 1 to 6, so that the teacher also have like a learning process during the interventions in order to become more accustomed with and comfortable with digitally based learning designs. And then the students construct learning resources for others. That's imperative. So here are the interventions where the first one that are less complex are learning resources for other students in math, digital storytelling, and math again with game dynamics or games, foreign language, science, and interdisciplinary projects, where we add also collaboration with other classes or other students in other places, maybe on the same school, maybe in other schools. That's up to the schools to decide. And what we do when we collect our data is that we have a large setup of mixed methods, where I would like to point out one that is very important for us, and that is because it's not design-based research, the other one. Action-based, thank you. It just slipped out of my head. And that is that we actually, in collaborative design processes, form and design what is going to go on during the interventions together with the teachers. Meaning that the teachers have their professionality, they know the kids, they know the topic and all that kind of thing. Where we help them out is, what does it mean to allow kids to become learning designers? What do we mean when we talk about evaluation as a learning strategy or a learning practice? Because they don't know that, and that's why we have to help them out and inspire them, but they find their own way to perform that in the class. We're not telling them, if you just do like this. And that also means that we decide something and then we realize, or the teachers say this doesn't work, so we negotiate and change strategies throughout the intervention. Each intervention might be different from what we originally planned because it's actually research. So the framework, the orange one, and this is a timeline, because there's always something that is before we do it and after we have done it, and in the middle we do it. So in that sense, there is a strict timeline, but that doesn't mean that it's not iterative processes, because the kids also have a before we do it, when we do it, and after we've done it. But that the whole thing is that the teacher designs a framework that allows the kids to have like a clone of the teacher process within the teacher's practice in the classroom. Does that make sense? Or please ask. And what is going on in there is that what we try to provoke in these sessions is that the students act those as producers of those learning designs for other kids. And because of that, they have to reflect about what does it mean to make something that others can learn from. Because it has to be something that others would like to learn from. So you have like hands-on, doing things, reflection, always going like this within the design. And that means that, how do we do that? How do we achieve that? What we have scaffolded the teachers into doing is, how do we have like a starting point where we talk with the kids about what are our learning objectives or our learning goals. And it's not like the teacher telling, because we say, you cannot tell them because then they won't internalize. They have to define for themselves. They put up words in kids' words. What are the goals? What does it take? Both for the contents of the subject matter and for the production. And then we work with 3 different kinds of evaluation practices throughout the timeline. And that is student self-reflection, that might come from the students themselves, or teacher support, peer response, both the teacher initiated or just the students doing it, and the teacher response. And what we are aiming at is that we use the verbalized objectives in student language to support the ownership and the way to actually control their own production process. And what we see is that it actually helps them to stay on focus. They can keep their focus for, even first graders can keep the focus. You can let them out for an hour without teacher supervision, and they actually come back with what they're supposed to come back with. And I'll come back to that later. So what we see is that we encourage the teachers to design scheduled timeouts for various forms of evaluation throughout an intervention. And in order to make sure, wow, oh my God. So, yes. And what we see is that these other, the teacher initiated ad hoc pops up. The student ad hoc evaluation initiated by themselves pop up. It just happened. And the students plan, they actually start to plan evaluation themselves. They want to say, come and look at our, we need some evaluation. And what we see is that we thought that evaluation was important, but what we found out very soon in the project was that it was really, really important. And that we actually tried to place ourselves between, in the middle of formative and summative, because we see them as complementary processes. And what we see and what we stress in our project is that it's performed by both teachers and students. That's the yellow ones. And it allows the students to empowerment and agency in the learning processes, and it supports formative and summative evaluation as complementary strategies. So, one example is 10th graders making branching stories in a tool called Input Writer. And what we see is that the teacher have planned some, the red one are the teachers planned evaluations, and what popped up is that the students initiated their own evaluations on their own initiative, and they use the learning goals in order to support that process. Not just what do you think, and but that's very nice and that kind of thing. So that's, in the 10th graders we saw that they took their own initiative and control over their learning process. in the second grade, where they were working with a task, remediate a known fairy tale into a multi-modal presentation. The teacher starts the talk with the class. There are some learning goals there. Here, the teacher doesn't mention them at all, but say, what does it take for a fairy tale to become a good fairy tale for others? So the kids say, well, others should know who is who. Others can tell how they are and feel. Are they sad or happy or angry or frightened or whatever? Can others see where we are in the what place, where's the stage? And can we understand what's going on? That's what the kid says. And actually that goes back to the formalized learning goals. So that is learning goals turned into requirements for our production. And the kids bring that with them out in the rain, taking pictures. So the learning goals then turn into evaluation criteria, but then they come back with an image from Hans and Rikke, the fairy tale. And this kid is part of the group. She airs up their picture on the screen, and the other kids talk about, is that a good picture or a bad picture? How should it be changed in order to fit into the narrative in a way so they could see this is the witch, this is Hans in the cage, and she's trying to feed him up to get fat for eating. And he's putting out a stick to show that he's thin. So then they turn into evaluation critics because the kids ask, can we see how they feel? Can we understand what's going on? And then it becomes peer suggestion framework. And it's always the learning goals turning around, changing the representation and form. So then the kids start in suggestion, if you cannot see what's going on, then you could do this and that. And what happened is that those kids went out in the rain and played on a slippery clay slide for 20 minutes, and I thought they're never coming back with anything. And then somebody said, well, we've got to take those pictures. And they said, well, they said to us, so no, we have to then, and organizing, taking the pictures, coming back with really good pictures after 40 minutes of no supervision. And remembering the learning goals. So what we see is that this actually works when it is this kind of very complex design where you allow to turn your back to the kids and show them trust, but give them tools in order to keep on their own track. And what we see is that all these things run into a very complex future development that needs a lot of research, because what we see is what's going in here between reflection and evaluation practices and digitalization as an empowerment tool is that you have like the subject matter representations, professional, or how users get to present subject matters, gets into a dialectic process that feeds back on how do we evaluate digitalized, because now we have like national tests, but they cannot cope with these kinds of learning. They cannot cope with multimodality or anything. They just measure, can you calculate, can you spell a word, or that kind of thing. So we have to change about digital evaluation tools also, impacts on that, and impacts on what kind of digital learning resources do we need in order to. So we have all this going around, and that's where we are right now in the middle of our project, where we can see that some of these things are going to be part of our new research. So that was it. Thank you.